Welcome to Brainstoryum. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author. And yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello imaginative people, I'm Anna Tizard and this is episode 80 of Brainstoryum. Now, as I mentioned last time, today I'm going to talk a bit about a series I absolutely love that has monstrous themes at its heart. Ransom Riggs' Peculiar Children series, which begins with Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. They made that one into a movie. Didn't like it. Haven't watched it since, but my goodness, I don't know how many times I have read the book or the whole series because I just love it. As an author, I have to ask, why? What is it that I love so much? And how can I pinpoint these story elements, themes or types of stuff going on to transform them into something that's uniquely my own in my own writing? This is a great exercise for any writer in honing on the real stuff that excites you. The better you know yourself as a reader and why you enjoy what you enjoy, the more you can tap into the same kind of magic in your own writing. And that sort of excitement is infectious. If you're excited about what you're writing, this will come across in the style more easily, let alone your fundamental choices about what you've decided to write about. Now, while the Peculiar Children series is mainly built around monsters, the threat of these monsters who have tentacles coming out of their mouths and basically eat your soul, pretty way out there stuff, Riggs casts the philosophical net a bit wider than just monster fighting. The peculiar children who have various oddities and strange powers are effectively outcasts from ordinary life and are wrongly considered a threat to others, or at least potentially so. They have to live apart from the real world in time loops. So there's this lingering question of what is a monster, and are some people labelled monsters unfairly? And the protagonist, whose life is painfully banal, or so he feels, gets to experience this incredible acceptance and belonging in the peculiar group when he finally meets them, who become less peculiar to him once there's acceptance and understanding on both sides. The thought-provoking element of the story, I appreciate a bit of chin-stroking when it's cleverly incorporated into the story itself and the protagonist's emotional experience. But grey areas aside, the real undeniable monsters in the story, these tentacled hollows as they're called, are pretty horrific. But on rereading book one, I was surprised that even though we have a brief sighting near the beginning, there is no actual confrontation, a physical confrontation with a hollow, until 4/5 of the way through the book. 4/5! Think about it. This is a book that is ultimately about monster hunting, and yet you have to wait that long. So the rest is build-up, suspense. Times when the characters feel relatively safe, times when they're in absolute dread, or somewhere in between. Or they're finding out more about the other secondary dangers that are threatening their lives. There's lots of other story elements packed in, with tensions going on between the characters as the protagonist, Jacob, gets to know the children and needs to make a life-changing decision. So there's a lot more going on than the threat of monsters here. Riggs is very attentive in his writing to the psychological effects of what goes on. He gives us, and the protagonist, little moments, a bit of breathing space after some high action to sort of check in on how this is all affecting Jacob, which very much keeps you with the main character. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to reread it, is just to sort of start to really notice these things rather than just be swept along like I always am. I would also note that at just over 2/3 of the way through, someone is killed, which is proof of mortal danger posed by the Hollows. So when you're focusing on building suspense, and like me, you think, right, I don't necessarily have to make all of it about the monsters, and it's definitely not all about confrontations with monsters. There's lots to explore with the impending threat of them, like shadows around the edges of your story. But we have to be careful to ensure that the threat continues to feel real and immediate. There's nothing quite like an injury or a death along the way to prove this threat, sort of refresh it and keep the readers on their toes. In a way, rereading book 1 has sort of answered my question as to why I'm so often bored by action movies where people almost continuously break into fights. And they seem like fights for the sake of fights sometimes. If you know that the protagonist is going to survive, and you can tell this is just pure action, visual filler, then the fight feels like a waste of time to the story overall. It's just choreography. It's slick, but it's just visual showing off. I don't feel any real tension around it. What's more effective to me is suspense, a building up of tension, the unknown, and we all know how much monster fiction relies on the unknown, and the protagonist needing to gradually piece together clues as to what it is they're up against. Or at least you will know that if you've been listening to my weird creature-themed shows from episode 74 onwards. So get on with it if you haven't already. So there you have it. This is only a fleeting review of Rigg's series of books and what I love about them. But I think it's been useful to me as an author to reread them, purely to reflect on how vital suspense is. How the characters' journeys are the real thing that fleshes out a story. How their fear of the monster is probably more potent than the monster itself in terms of writing a story. The way the characters react, what the dangers mean to them personally, and it's always more than just a life and death matter. That is what makes the story gripping and relatable. People aren't just running around screaming or plotting tactics, working out weapons to try against the monster. Always, the heart of the story beats with the personal reasons why. So maybe I don't need to worry so much about being intimidated by writing fight scenes, although this is still something I very much want to explore and will do so in another episode coming up. And I almost forgot to mention, the Peculiar Children series was inspired by these old black and white photos with mysterious looking people in them, in strange positions sometimes, and seeming to have peculiar powers, hence the themes of the stories. The author went through thousands of old photos in markets, and he visited collectors of unusual old photographs and went through thousands and thousands of them and made up this story about them. It's so Exquisite Corpse, without actually being Exquisite Corpse, if you know what I mean. Well, I think it's time to find our own bizarre writing prompts. And as there was no time to gather your story ideas on the prompts from the last show, as I'm still recording a couple of shows in quick succession before I go away in May, I have to just say, bring forth the socks of destiny. That's right, and for those who haven't listened before or played before, Exquisite Corpse mixes words and phrases from different players into a sentence that goes describing word, noun, action, describing word, noun. So let's see what we find in the first sock of destiny. Our first word is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts. Desiccated. So dried. It's usually fruit that is dried. Our next word is obviously not going to be fruit, is it? Come on. Right, our next word is from Paul Thomas. Planet. Ooh, desiccated planet. Ooh, that sounds a little bit apocalyptic, maybe. Something that's become dried up and shriveled in space. I don't know. Let's try for an action. This is again from Sean, Blue Wizard Facts. Kept a record of their vacation with. So this might not be a literal desiccated planet. Might have to think outside the box if we're going to make sense of this exquisite corpse. Let's try for another word. This is from Alessandro Bozzo. Insatiable. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna... Someone who can't be satisfied with anything. Let's just try for a final word and we'll try and make sense of this rather bizarre sentence. This is from Mariah. Cult figure. So the entire exquisite corpse is the desiccated planet kept a record of their vacation with the insatiable cult figure. Oh my goodness. I'm putting the sock down. I think my green tea is brewed enough. I think I need the inspiration, so I'm just going to give it a stir. And pour that out. Right. Okay, with the magic of green tea, it will all come clear. So the desiccated planet kept a record of their vacation with the insatiable cult figure. Oh, this is a crazy one. I want to start with the insatiable cult figure because that actually makes a bit of sense to me. How else do you become a cult figure except by being insatiable? You must surely crave the attention, perhaps the power, maybe money. You'd have to be the sort of person who can never get enough of something. When you see celebrities who are like wannabes, who haven't really done much but have just kind of appeared on one of these awful so-called reality shows, and you're like, who are they? The nature of what goes on in those shows, which seems to me like playground politics, frankly. But to go on a show like that, you'd have to want the attention without necessarily putting much thought into why you want that attention. You've just got to have it. A cult figure, though, rather than just one of these wannabes, might be a great actor, for example. And to have got where they are, to be considered a cult figure, they would also have to have a deep hankering for, well, if not success, then being the very best they can be. Having that deep, never-ending obsession with their craft or what they do. Now that's something I can identify with to some extent. I might not be a cult figure, but that desire to achieve something really special and different, that can communicate, elevate, fill people with a sense of wonder, it does take a certain kind of devotion. I was going to say dedication, but I think it is devotion. That's the word. It is deep. So the insatiable cult figure is an interesting word combination to me because it seems kind of true. A character to develop. Could you make that cult figure so insatiable or obsessive that they're dangerous? This is often the way with character building, I'd say. You take some ordinary or at least relatable characteristic, some of which you definitely find inside yourself in some form. Then you tweak, you stretch, you ask what if, and pull the traits in different directions, add different reasons or personal histories which give you those reasons. And then you end up with someone who is not you at all, but is in still some way relatable. I've strayed so far on this, I've forgotten what the full Exquisite Corpse was, which you probably have too. So let me read it again. The desiccated planet kept a record of their vacation with the insatiable cult figure. Okay, more green tea. Right, I want to get creative with the desiccated planet. It sounds like it could be like a giant round cookie, hopefully with chocolate chips. But the problem is that the Exquisite Corpse says that this so-called desiccated planet kept a record of their vacation with the insatiable cult figure. So how does that work? Could the desiccated planet be a supplier of dried food products? That is a weird company name, but it kind of works. Manufacturer of those little chewy health bars, all squashed figs and dried apricots, full of fibre. The fact that there are two characters going on holiday together will probably affect what kind of cult figure we're talking about, their area of work, or where or why they are considered a cult figure. Because if these two characters are close enough to be travelling together, but actually now insatiable potentially takes on a different meaning. What if they're hooked on these chewy health bars? And it really is a random pair of people who've not known each other before. And now I'm thinking that this is a business trip and they are a mismatched pair who get stuck together. Think planes, trains and automobiles. But potentially creepier, with a dangerous edge. Amid plane delays and cancellations, two travellers make a pact to find their way to their shared holiday destination. And the reason why the semi-famous actor does this and feels safe with the chewy health bar maker, owner of a company called Desiccated Planet, who prides themselves on using selected ingredients from across the world, is that the dried fruit enthusiast never watches films and has no idea who the actor is. So he just treats the cult figure as the normal guy, which is refreshing and oddly reassuring. But then something happens to upset this unnatural balance. Does the cult figure become hooked on the dried fruit bars? So they become insatiable. This is just getting really strange. And keeping a record of this vacation, as the Exquisite Corpse suggests, I'm thinking you could write it like a diary, like Day 1. Stiff from a terrible sleep last night. So glad to see the back of that hotel. Though it's not like we know where we're going to land up next. George shared another of his fruit bars with me. Apricot and cacao. These flavours are growing on me. Oh gosh, what next? And which one is the evil character? Is there an evil character? Or is there just a misunderstanding where they both think the other one is the evil one. That could work as quite a weird story. I can sort of picture it. People getting fidgety on a plane. But where's the weird creature in all of this? Because that is still the theme that I'd like to go for in general. I think maybe time for another Exquisite Corpse. Okay, the first word is from Paul Benfield, drenched. Okay, so who or what is soaking wet and why? Next word is from Alessandro Bozzo, wolf. We are moving towards creatures. Let's see what action part we have. This is from Sophie de Soles, gave up on. It's an interesting action. So, resigning yourself to something, allowing for disappointment. Oops, this next word nearly leaped out of the sock of destiny, so it clearly wants to get out. This is from Mariah. Dragon-like. Okay, now we have a creature. Final word. This is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts. Oh gosh, heavily pregnant woman. A dragon-like heavily pregnant woman? Okay, so the entire Exquisite Corpse is the drenched wolf gave up on the dragon-like heavily pregnant woman. Okay, so that's quite bizarre. First of all, I want to ask, why is the wolf drenched? Is this an underwater wolf? A mutant wolf who can swim underwater for long periods, treading its way through the water? Or is there a simple reason for being drenched, splashing through puddles in a hurry to get somewhere? Caught in the rain, eyes staring hard like twin lights glowing in the murk of the trees, but otherwise swallowed up by the streaks of forest and the deluge. And the other end of the Exquisite Corpse, a dragon-like woman. You know, it makes me think of the story that I've been developing. I mentioned a couple of shows ago, I think, where the owner of a pet store who sells genetically modified dragons is dragged into a war around a cruel, secretive breeding centre. It's based in a pine forest at the foot of the mountains where no one dares to go because wild dragons still roam there. So what if this dragon-like woman is part of an experiment to see if part dragons can actually give birth? Because not all genetic experiments are done in test tubes and incubators now. The test subjects are becoming more human than dragon, and the baby needs more than that, and it won't hatch from an egg. But what does this Exquisite Corpse mean in that case? The drenched wolf gave up on the dragon-like, heavily pregnant woman. Gave up on, as in, decided not to eat. She came close to being its prey, but something made it stop. What is the lone wolf doing there anyway? Its yellow eyes glowing hungrily in the shadows. Could this be the story I try to write today? Well, let's see if the Socks of Destiny have something else worth writing. Okay, so our first word is from Paul Benfield, flitting. So a bit of movement going on there. Interesting. Not quite an adjective, but that's good. That's just as good for a describing word. Next word is from, also Paul Benfield. Letter. A flitting letter. What could that be? This is strange. Could it be the subject of the letter keeps flitting around between different things? Someone changing their mind about what they want to say. Next word or phrase, for this is an action part, is from Sean, Blue Wizard Facts. What? Rolled overboard. Ooh, so that sounds like something that happens on a boat or a ship. This is very strange. So our next word is from Paul Thomas. Thought-provoking. Okay, this is getting weirder and weirder, but I guess that's kind of the point. Things I couldn't imagine on my own. That's what Exquisite Corpse gives me. Final word, and hopefully gives you as well. Final word is from Mariah. School teacher. I can imagine a thought-provoking school teacher, but can I imagine how or why the flitting letter rolled overboard the thought-provoking school teacher? I'm just going to have some more green tea. Right, if a letter is flitting, it makes me think of a letter that's been folded up, like origami, a paper plane, or even a bird that's come alive, like a paper bird that's flitting and fluttering. But how could you roll overboard because of a letter, unless that letter was shocking in some way? You just fall over and roll off. Or you were trapped on a ship somehow, kidnapped or something, and the letter, which had come to you by magic, like a paper bird flapping through the clouds, either gives you such a shock that you collapse, faint, and roll overboard, or, I don't know, reaches out and slaps you and knocks you overboard. It sounds so far-fetched, but in a way that's what's intrigued me. It's like a puzzle I want to solve. However, why or how would a school teacher land up on a ship? I just don't know how to put this together, because there seem to be two very different settings suggested by this Exquisite Corpse. A ship, because of the phrase rolled overboard, and a school teacher, which suggests a school. But I think this is the one. That letter is flitting around my head, and I think I just need to try this with the pause button, of course, and see where this idea takes me. The school teacher slept on the upper deck. The sun stroked his face. A breeze bristled the hairs of his beard. He'd grown it in honour of the school play, a production of Peter Pan to encourage the kids who hadn't made it into the main cast of characters and had ended up as pirates. If ever he needed to regain his class's attention, he'd throw on his Captain Hook's hat again and give them a mock-mean stare. The memory of the giggle he'd inspire from the class rose like a rippling wave and crashed away. He murmured, caught in a muddle of dreams. A strange serendipity, or perhaps life's little joke, was that he was here now, out at sea, though no more a pirate than he had been in class. Images crystallised as the hot sun and the lulling waves pulled him deeper into dreams. He was running through a corridor late for class. E9 was raucous, out of control, throwing paper aeroplanes at each other, with fisticuffs breaking out between Tim and Benjamin, always the troublemakers in that class. The corridor oozed and stretched as he ran, a swooping sensation under his feet. It was the day of the school inspection. Today of all days he couldn't be late for class, and E9 must not be out of control. The ship plunged. Clouds bundled and thickened, casting a shadow. The teacher's eyelids fluttered. The tension between dream world and waking world tightened, like ropes groaning against wood. In the school corridor of his dream, he was clinging to a rope. The ceiling began to leak, great drops of water spattering his face. But he was nearly there. He could hear the kids shouting and a stern voice underneath them all, telling them to be quiet and asking them where their teacher was. Terror rolled inside his gut like thunder. He had to get there and calm everyone down, get the kids in order. One of their paper aeroplanes zipped into the corridor, whisking past his face. He jerked. His real body flinched too on the deck of the ship, which was now rolling precariously. Footsteps stomped back and forth, shipmates hurrying to their positions at the sudden turn in the weather, hoisting, pulling, tying new knots, calling to each other. Fat droplets of rain spattered shadows on the deck, some as big as a child's fist. Still the teacher slept on. One of the crew crouched by him, calling his name, shaking his shoulder. Inside his dream, everything was swirling, turning about. The corridor tipped one side, then the other. The children's voices sounded older, urgent cries that issued instructions. Had he been running down the corridor for so long that they'd grown up? The escaped paper aeroplane still flitted from wall to wall, bouncing as if headbutting, trying to get out. He had to catch it. He knew it contained the truth about him. One of the kids had written it down. It was the awful truth about him that the school inspector could not know, must not know. Simon! Yes, that was his name. Had been his name for about 2 years now. Simon, are you drunk? Get up, a storm's coming. Finally, the schoolteacher sputtered awake, gasping as if coming up from underwater. He was on a ship. He was Simon again. Salt air and water dashed about him, the two elements almost indistinguishable now. The man crouched by him, his lean, bristled face scrunched against the lashing rain, still shouting as if Simon was several yards away. What are you doing out here? You can't just... The ship dived and swooped up again, cutting off his reprimand as he grabbed onto whatever he could. Thrown back down, Simon spread his arms either side of him, hands pressed hard against the deck as his claws dug in for dear life. The shipmate, what was his name, was about to say something else when the ship tipped again and the man stumbled away. Simon lay stiff but raised his head. Through the ink-blotted sky, a narrow white shape ducked and dived. His heart turned over, a sensation that had nothing to do with the vessel bucking under him. Scrambling up, he reached out and snatched the paper aeroplane as it flitted into his hand. In the rushing rain, he had only seconds to fumble the thing open, with shaking hands and a pulse thudding in his ears. Soaked now, the paper tore in 3 places as he managed to tug it flat, but had just long enough to read. They know who you are. Escape plan has failed. Find another way. This time, play dead. Simon held the page, reading it over and over until the rain obliterated the ink, words melting into nothing. He could hear the friendly shipmates call again. It gave Simon a pang, thinking of the friendship they might have shared. But this was no place for a monster. Same as the school was no place for him either. The children sensed that he was different, though most of them liked it. The way he spoke to them, his lessons were always fun and thought-provoking, in a way that they thought seemed daring. They had no idea how bold he'd had to be, spying on humans in this almost perfect disguise. Simon pressed the page against his chest and took a pointless, needless breath before he rolled overboard, into the ocean. It was time to be something else. Simon? Don't look now, he thought, diving deeper, feeling the ocean clothe him with new skin. His fins opened and he swerved to drink the oxygen in the water. Oh, this was unexpected. I really did not know where this would go when I started, but the idea came to me of the crossover between a dream world and the real world, probably because the Exquisite Corpse suggests two such completely different settings. The flitting letter rolled overboard, the thought-provoking school teacher. I just couldn't work out how a school teacher would end up on a ship, and the likelihood of him or her rolling overboard seemed so remote that I spliced the two settings side by side through dream world versus real world, and then I suppose I just worked out a way to make one affect the other. And that's what really appeals to me about dreampunk as a genre, the idea of this crossover space where dreams might impact on reality. Well, the reality of the story world that you're writing in. But this story still feels like the tip of the iceberg. What is Simon, really? Why is he spying on the human race? And why does this make me think of an Exquisite Corpse that came up in a previous episode, 75, in a changed world where some people have become shapeshifters and there's a captain of a boat who's part otter? I looked it up on pause, of course. I can't remember these things off the top of my head. And it was the fluffy captain swam underwater to the gleeful builder in episode 75. It's just this whole idea of shapeshifting and a changed world where people are sort of part creature, or some people are part creature. Perhaps I'll leave that question up to my subconscious mind to work out. Is there a connection between the stories? Do you ever do that? Write down a question and then just leave it, trusting your mind to come up with the answer without any conscious effort. It does sometimes work, I find. Oddly enough, the more you sort of generally believe in it and relax, kind of leave it alone, the more it seems to work. It seems to happen of its own accord. Maybe that's not odd at all. It does kind of make a sense to me in a way. Right, well, hopefully I've given you plenty to think about and daydream about today, and perhaps in the coming week. Flitting letters, shape-shifting school teachers, addictive cereal bars, and half-dragon ladies about to give birth to the next generation of whatever creatures they might be. Sadly, like last time, I'm about to record another podcast shortly after this one. Well, that's not sad. It's just it's the fact I'm banking them up because I'm away in May. So if you do get in touch with any story suggestions in the meantime, I won't be able to read them out in the next show because it just won't be time for me to do that. Even so, it is my wish that you go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstoryum. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.